Welcome to another episode of the How to Do Your 20s podcast. And this is kind of a special episode. And this is something I want to do every 6 months or at least once a year. In this episode, it's going to be a recap of my last year and going to talk about some of the lessons I've learned along with some of the goals for next year. But don't think this is just going to be about me. This is really going to be a content-packed episode where I talk about all the really interesting things I've learned about life or anything that I think could help you guys. But of course, it's going to be a reflection on how I've learned things. So before we get started, I want to let you know that I'm going to do a special episode that's only going to be released to people that sign up for my email offer. And to do that, you can go to www.howtodoyour20s.com and sign up at the top for the email offer. And you'll see it. It'll say, hey, put your email here. Don't worry, I'm not going to send you any junk email. At most, I'll probably send out emails once a month. And when I send out emails, it's going to be secret episodes, the secret podcast episodes that I don't release on iTunes, Stitcher, whatever. These are going to be the secret episodes just for people that have the email, that are on my email list. And the episode's going to be all about how to actually set goals properly. And I know, it's January, it's time to set the New Year's resolution. But I'm not a big fan of New Year's resolutions, despite this episode. I'm a big fan of setting goals all the time, though. And there's some ways that you can set goals properly, and there's some ways that you shouldn't do it. And the funny thing is, most people that set goals do it wrong. So we're going to go over how to hack the goal-setting feature in your life, if you will. And it's going to be everything from rewarding yourself, which a lot of people do this kind of naturally, but they do it wrong. And it's going to go also into what we call tiny habits. And BJ Fogg is the one that really brought this into the mainstream. And BJ Fogg is a really interesting guy because he's a computer scientist that makes behavioral models for computers. So his goal is to figure out how to make computers kind of interact more like humans. And in the process, basically what he's found out is how to motivate humans to do things. And one of the cool things, one of the sites he founded was called Tiny Habits. And what he says is, for instance, let's say you want to floss your teeth every day. And anyone that's ever grown up not flossing their teeth and has tried to learn to start flossing their teeth every day, it's a hard habit to really, keep going. And what he says you should do is make a goal to only floss one tooth every day. And I know what you're thinking, flossing one tooth, what's the use in that? Well, this is where it gets interesting. If your goal is to floss one tooth a day, you're going to make sure you floss one tooth every day because it's just such an easy thing to do. It takes 5 seconds. But where it gets really interesting is once you floss one tooth, you're going to floss them all because you're already there. It's like, keep the momentum going. And in this episode that I'm doing that I'm going to send out if you sign up for the email offer, we're going to talk about all that kind of stuff. And there's a term called stacking successes too that we're going to get into. But we're also going to get into some of the cool neuroscience behind it and why you should reward yourself after you do something good. So let's say you just did a 30-minute jog and you're not someone that works out a lot. It's okay to have that cupcake because in time, what's going to happen is you're going to associate in your brain that, hey, going for a 30-minute jog is pleasurable and you're going to want to do that more often. And it's really interesting how our brains work. We're really kind of primitive as far as the reward centers of our brain go. So if you can link an action that's good for you with pleasure, you're going to want to do that, even when you take away that reward, that cupcake, whatever it is in the future. So we're going to get all into that in the episode. But this episode right now, we're going to talk about a couple different things. And some of the cool topics we're going to go over is this idea that the grass is always greener, or this other idea of I'll be happy when this happens, a little bit of work-life balance, and something that's really interesting I found out in this last year is that from a productivity standpoint, sometimes it's actually really beneficial to have fun. And let's get into that in just a little bit. But at the end of this episode, I'm going to share one of my favorite quotes with you guys. And it's from Henry Ford. And it's about his thoughts on money and savings and how basically the way that we all think about saving money is just freaking retarded. And he's right. And when you listen to him, it's dead on because basically the way people tell you to save money and, kind of store it up is so backwards. And I'll explain why when you hear this quote at the end of the episode. But I think if people looked at their finances more like a business, the world would be a better place. So stick around to the end for that. Let's start with the real episode here. So first off, I'm going to do a little rehash of my last year for anybody that doesn't know what I've done this last year. And the beginning of the year, January, February, I was really just working my ass off at home. And I co-own a business with my mom, and we sell dance clothing. And I know that might sound a little ridiculous to a lot of people, but I'm not into the dance world. That's not my thing, but I love marketing. I love owning a business. It's my passion. I love this idea of your creativity, your intelligence is able to make you money, not just today, not just, while you still have this job, but forever. And what I mean by that is if I have a really good idea for the business, and let's say that one idea goes viral, for instance, I have a marketing campaign idea that goes viral, that could keep being viral for as long as, who knows. On the flip side, if you have a corporate job, you get paid more or less by the hour salary. And as soon as you quit or, God forbid, get fired, doesn't matter how smart you were during those 2 years that you had that job, it's not rewarded anymore. You're paid for your time. You're basically converting your time into money. So that was, January, February. And now after that, I went over to Brazil. I went to Rio specifically. And that was really fun. That was really cool. I did some jiu-jitsu. In Rio, I did spend some time at Carnival. That's why part of the reason I went there in February. But that was a blast. I will say that was a blast. But the truth is, after that, I didn't really have a lot of fun in Rio. And it's my own fault. It's because my mind was still thinking about work all the time. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this throughout the episode. But what I realized is I haven't met my financial goal yet. And I think until I do, my mind's going to constantly be thinking about that to some degree. So after that, after Rio, I realized towards the end, hey, I need to come back home and really focus on the business for a little while. So I spent the entire summer working on the business, working really hard on the business, and I could do a whole episode about that and as far as productivity is concerned. But I was able to more or less 3 to 4x the business. And what I mean by that is in May, we did about $12,000 in revenue. And then come October, we were doing about $40,000, and it looks like this month, January, we're going to do even more. Today, we had over $3,000 in sales and lots of small sales. So that's a whole nother topic. But this summer, I really spent a lot of time working on the business. After that, as some of you may know, I was in Buenos Aires for about 3 months as well. And I started off kind of trying to enjoy myself, go out. And I did. Don't get me wrong. All these places, I still have fun. But in the back of my head, I'm constantly thinking about the business. So I spent the last month or so in Buenos Aires back working. And the problem is, when I'm in another country trying to work, as you can quickly understand, it's hard to focus because there's so many other options, so many other things to do. So then after that, I went back home a couple months ago. It was early November, right before Thanksgiving, and started working again. And I know as I'm saying this out loud, it might sound like I'm always working. I'm not. Obviously, when I'm in Rio or I'm in Buenos Aires, I'm having a fun time too. But the truth is I've set out to have a goal, and my goal is $200 a day in semi-passive income, meaning that, I don't have to wake up at a certain time. I don't have to work every day. If I want to take a day off for a reason, I can. So my goal is $200 a day, quote unquote, passive income. And I'm really close. And that's one of the problems is I'm so close. I can see it ahead that I don't want to focus on other things. I don't want to, focus on growing my friend base and doing all this other stuff when it's like, oh, that goal is so close. So now let's get into some of the things I've learned in this last year. And really quickly, I think there's probably 4 main ones. The first is I do enjoy staying in one place for a while, or at least I think I do. The second one is I want to work. I really do want to work, and this is a whole topic we'll get into later. I had a friend of mine last year actually, basically tell me that, I'm a lazy person, which the funny thing is I think most people that know me would say that guy's crazy, but that's a whole nother topic. Another thing is I need to start enjoying myself a little bit more. I need to have fun in my life. I need to be doing this. And then the fourth one is I need to take better care of my body. And that's a little bit different than it might sound like at first. And I have some different, like, old football injuries and stuff like that I need to take care of. But I want to talk a little bit about that. And as far as the East meets the West approach to medicine and kind of thinking, and we're going to get deep. We're going to talk about, Qi versus neuroscience and how they're really very, very similar in a lot of ways. But we'll save that for the end there. So let's start with this idea of I enjoy staying in one place. And a lot of people listening to this probably aren't location independent, if I had to guess. And what I mean by location independent is, for instance, me, I don't need to be in one place. I don't have a job that depends on me staying in, for instance, Chicago. I had in the past a job where it's like I kind of had to live in Chicago if I didn't live, or at least within the United States or whatever. Right now, I'm completely location independent. So for those people listening that aren't location independent, they're kind of stuck in one city, assuming it's a decent city, assuming it's not like your hometown. There's some good to that too. And I know it's really easy to think, it'd be so much better if I could live wherever I wanted to. And they're probably right a little bit. But at the same time, take it from someone who can live wherever they want. There's a part of me that would love the idea of having to stay in one place. And there's a couple different reasons why I say that. And one of the reasons I like to stay in one place is this idea of routines. And what I mean by that is, if you're constantly moving around, you never really get a routine. It's always about, where am I going next? I got to unpack. I got to do this. I got to get ready to go there. And you never get a chance to kind of get in a flow. And I found for me, when I move to a new city, it generally takes me about 3 weeks before I get in a routine, I get in a flow. So for about 3 weeks, I'm kind of just spinning my wheels. I'm not nearly as productive as I could be. And I find in a lot of very, very successful people find that having a routine is one of the keys to success. So I find that having a morning routine is a really big deal. So you don't need to think every morning, what am I going to have for breakfast today? What am I going to do? Should I do some meditation this morning, which I highly recommend looking into. That's another one of those things that I've noticed a lot of very successful people do is meditation. And it's helped me to some degree, not as much as I think a lot of people say it helps them. So try it out for yourself, of course. But routines are huge. And I think, too, what I found personally is if I constantly have to think, what am I having for breakfast? What am I having for lunch? What am I having for dinner? It's kind of taxing on my brain, where now, while I'm at home, I know what I'm going to have for breakfast. I don't think twice about it. I cook it. I have this, and while I'm cooking, I'm kind of in this Zen-like mode where my mind's free to kind of relax. And you don't get that if you're constantly changing things up. And when you move to a new country, like I've done a lot, you don't know what you can have for lunch because you don't know what there is a lot of times. So when you first get there, it's like, when I'm at home, I really like having, for instance, for me, I like having chicken with sweet potatoes. That's one of my favorite dishes. It sounds really boring, but it's delicious. Trust me, try it out. Chicken breast and sweet potatoes. Now, I moved to Buenos Aires, for instance, and they don't have sweet potatoes. They have a weird thing that's kind of similar, so, maybe I can substitute that. But the point is, I found personally that kind of moving around all the time has led to me not being as happy or as productive as I'd like to be. And I know this sounds awful for all those people out there who are stuck in some crappy town, like I was. I was stuck in Chicago for 2 years, and that's not a ton of time by any means, but I'm going to tell you right now, in the winter, there's other places that I'd rather have been than Chicago. And if I would have heard someone saying, it kind of sucks being able to live wherever, I'd be pissed off. But understand that it's fun to experience new cities for a while, but I think at this point in time, I'd like to pick a place and stay there for a little while. And once again, the moving experience is extremely exhausting. In fact, before Rio and before Buenos Aires, about once a week, I would have just an anxiety-filled dream, and it sounds weird again, but I don't know if anyone's ever had these, where you have these dreams where you're late to something. And my specific one was I was late to my flight, and every week or whatever, I'd have this dream where I'm late to my flight, and I'd just be so stressed out. And of course, it's a dream, so that nothing makes sense, and it's like I'm trying to do it. Where in real life, when you're late to something like that, it's a problem, but usually you can kind of figure out a way around it. But the point was, I was having this anxiety about moving again, and I think what it was to some degree is my subconscious telling me like, hey, this isn't really what you want to do. You should try sticking to one place for a little while. So that kind of wraps up a little bit. One of the big things that I learned this last year is I don't want to move around so much. I want to stick to one place. That all being said, I do have a flight booked in about a month to Thailand. The difference is I'm not going to approach it the same way I've approached these other trips. I'm going to approach it as this is a vacation. Where before, every time I'd move to Rio or to Buenos Aires, it's like, okay, I'm here, I need to make a bunch of friends, I need to find girls to date or whatever, and I put all this stress on myself. The thing is, if you're in the same location for a while, if you have a couple friends, it's easy to meet friends when you have time. When you put that pressure on yourself of like, oh, I want to meet a bunch of people right away, it's not that much fun because it's like you're kind of forcing yourself to do it. And the other thing I found is after the first month of being in a new city, you don't really want to meet people as much because there's this idea of, well, I'm going to leave in a month anyway, so what's the point of meeting new people? And I don't like that. I'd like to stay in one city, so I don't have that feeling. I'd like it to be where it's, oh, yeah, I always want to meet new people. Of course I want to expand my social circle. Of course. It was the same thing with dating. It's like, oh, I'd meet a really cool girl, and I'm like, crap, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. Like, this girl was awesome. What am I going to do now? So that kind of wraps up that whole staying in one place. So that's one of my goals for this next year, is I want to stay in one place for a while. And I have no problem with doing the vacation thing, but I don't want to try to pick a location and stay there, live there for 3 months, at least for now. So the next thing I really learned about myself, and I think this is probably applicable to a lot of people listening to this, is I want to work. As much as it's awesome traveling around the world, I want to work. There's a part of me that needs that sense of accomplishment, the sense of doing something more important with my life. And it's been kind of hard for me to fully relax this last year. And I attribute part of that to, I think to really relax fully, you need to really work hard. I know, at least from my own personal experience, when I really have a hard day's work and I lay down, it feels just good. In fact, I've had multiple experiences of, working really hard or spending a lot of time learning something, and you lay down and listen to music and it just sounds 1,000 times better. It just sounds like, oh, this music sounds really good as I'm laying down. And I firmly believe that that's your dopamine, probably even more so your serotonin firing off saying, hey, you did good today. You worked hard. I'm going to reward you. This is your brain, of course, speaking. I'm going to reward you with a good, relaxing experience, and you're going to feel like you did something good with your life. So I really want to work hard, and I think I've realized that, and hopefully I'll use that to my advantage for this coming year. I haven't really been having a lot of quote-unquote fun. Like, I haven't really been going out of my way to enjoy myself, which is a problem, and that's something I'm going to fix, and I'll talk later in this episode about my goals. But I've been really constantly thinking about, okay, how can I do more for the business? How can I be productive? And that's not healthy. I've been extremely focused on hitting my goal of $200 a day, sometimes at the expense of my social life. Actually, not sometimes at the expense, almost always at the expense of my social life. I've not been trying to go out and, meet enough people. Once again, all this being said, in Buenos Aires, I had a ton of really cool friends, and it was an absolutely amazing experience. I've heard from a lot of successful people as well that you really can only focus on one thing at a time. And when I'm focused on work, I want to only be focused on work. And I found this experience in Rio and in Buenos Aires, where I was trying to learn Portuguese in Rio, of course, and Spanish in Buenos Aires. And the problem was I'd spend like half the day trying to learn Spanish, another half day working, and they're not compatible. Because while I'm working, I'm trying to think, oh, I feel bad for not studying my Spanish. And when I'm studying my Spanish, I'm thinking about my work. I'm a big believer in do one thing, do it hard, and then move on to the next thing. And you don't have to do that one thing, in my humble opinion, for years and years on end until you just crush whatever that goal is. So maybe your goal is to be fluent in Spanish. You don't have to spend, a year or two just really only working on Spanish. You can do 3 months really intense working on Spanish and 3 months working on your business or whatever your personal thing is. But I think you should have passion for whatever you're doing to some degree. I think you should, for instance, for me, once again, I was studying Spanish and I was like, really, there was this fire building inside of me to work on the business. And finally, I had to say to myself, I have all this energy that I want to spend working on my business. Maybe that's the better way to spend my energy rather than forcing myself out of a feeling of I need to accomplish something to work on Spanish. Because truthfully, the only reason I was working on the Spanish towards the end was I didn't want to be a quitter. Well, that's kind of stupid if you think about it from the point of view of I could slave for 4, 5, 6 hours, whatever, learning Spanish, or I can have fun working on my business. And they're both equally as productive from an outside point of view. So that's one of those things that I learned is that I really want to work. I want to work hard, but it has to be on something that I want to do, and I need to be focused on that one thing as much as possible. So next, the third point I have that I learned in the last year was I need to start enjoying myself more. And as you've probably heard throughout this episode already, multiple times in the last year, I've kind of been so focused on business, I haven't really thought, hey, am I having any fun? And that takes a toll. I found that if I spend a week working and after about 5 to 6 days, I'm in this fog. I'm just kind of like, I'm not there. And what I would do over summer is, I call up my buddy and be like, hey, let's go play some catch. Let's go, hit up, we'd go to the beach a lot and do fun stuff like that. And I'd find after that, I'm just recharged. I'm a better person. I'm a better worker. I'm a better everything. And there was a part of me that felt like, oh, that downtime is not productive. It's a waste of time. But the truth is that time is the recharge time that is needed. So, I spend a Sunday or a Saturday out with my friends playing, doing whatever, hiking something cool. Then what happens is on Monday or the next day I go back to work, I'm way more productive than I would have been if I just would have worked that entire Saturday or Sunday. And that's something that I don't feel like is really talked about enough. I feel like everybody feels like they constantly need to be going, but that's not true. That's not true at all. In fact, I think that's detrimental to not only your health, your happiness, but also your productivity. And I have a story that actually, in my personal opinion, really proved it to me. And what happened for me was I was in Rio, and this was in that period of time where I decided, hey, I don't want to party as much. I really want to get the ball rolling on my business. And I was doing that for a little while, and I was just burnt out. And a friend of mine asked if I wanted to go to Búzios, which is like an hour away. It's this cool place that there's a club, and it's just a fun place to go out drinking, doing all that crazy late night stuff. And it was a girlfriend of mine that had, I think, 3 girls coming as well. And what happened is we all went there. I stayed out late that Saturday night, I believe. Yeah, that Saturday night. I probably got an hour of sleep, if that. And we were in a hostel too, so, sharing beds and all that kind of fun stuff. Then, Sunday came and I'm just dead all Sunday. And then Sunday night, I get a good night's sleep. Monday turns around. It was one of the most productive days I've had all year. Maybe one of the most productive days of my life. I got a ton of work done that I really needed to do. I got a virtual assistant, which was something I've been dreading for a long time because I'm like, it's change. It's scary. It's unknown. Getting a virtual assistant was one of the best things I did all last year. If you run your own business or any way could apply it to your life, and I bet you most people out there could, look at getting a virtual assistant. I mean, anything you do that's repetitive and tedious, have your virtual assistant do it. And you probably could even get them to do a lot of the work that your bosses pay you to do. And you'll pay them about $2 an hour and you'll take home the rest. So that's something to think about, But 100% if you're an entrepreneur, get a virtual assistant. Now I'm getting a little off topic here. But the point I wanted to make is I spent the weekend drinking, staying out late, just having fun, and it led to one of the most productive days of my life. And obviously that's just, an anecdotal like story, but for me, it really proved to myself that I need to relax, enjoy myself a little bit more. So the last one we're going to get into here is this idea. For me personally, I really realized, and I think this is also true for a lot of the people out there listening to this, I need to take better care of my body. And what I mean by this isn't necessarily I need to stop drinking so much, which probably is true to some degree. I don't drink a ton, but I think that a lot of people listening to this probably could drink a little bit less and still be just as happy, probably happier, to be honest with you. I mean, waking up hungover for, you spend a night out drinking, you wake up hungover and waste an entire day. Sometimes it's okay, but sometimes it's not fun at all. It's not worth it. But what I specifically mean by this whole idea of taking better care of my body is, for me personally, I've had a lot of nagging pains and a lot of past injuries that I've never really taken the time to fix. And something that I've found is that when I have some of this nagging pain, whatever, it's extremely hard to focus. I'm not me. I'm not my best self. And even more specifically, it's really hard to enjoy myself. It's extremely hard to be happy when there's this pain that's in, my hip or the back of my thigh or whatever it is. And part of the reason this has been really interesting to me is this idea of this East versus West medicine philosophy, whatever you will. And in the East, if I were to go to like an Eastern medicine doctor, they'd say like, oh, well, your chi's not flowing, or, I don't know a lot about the whole idea of chakras, but like, oh, you need to open up one of your chakras. And both those have this idea of energy flowing throughout your body. Now, a lot of people listening to this might be like, oh, energy flowing throughout your body, that's a bunch of crazy nonsense. Well, it sounds that way at first, especially when hippie people say it. You know what? I love some of the ideas that the hippie people have, but you make it sound so bad. Now, what is energy when you think about it? Well, let's talk about that. So let's say you have some numbness in your leg, for instance, like I sometimes do. Well, energy is not flowing there. And what does that really mean? That means that the nerves are being pinched. What do nerves transmit? They pretty much transmit electricity to your muscles. That's energy right there. Another example is you'll hear like, oh, you have a knot, like the energy can't flow. You need to like as you're getting a massage, like I'm gonna get energy to flow throughout your back. Well, something that's interesting to me is blood vessels, and all that kind of stuff. If they're cramped, especially capillaries, energy in the form of glucose cannot flow to your muscles. So by releasing that, it really is energy. So the next time you hear some hippie person say something like that, understand that there's actually medical science behind it. So some quick things that I'm really interested in trying this next year. One of them's called AMIT, Advanced Muscle Integration Technique, and Tim Ferriss talks about this in his book, and it's basically turning off dead muscles. And I believe that some of the muscles in my body, what happens basically, let's rewind and talk about what this actually is. What happens is muscles get overloaded and have to work too hard. So let's say you have bad posture and a certain muscle is taking over more of the effort than it's supposed to. If it has to work too hard, at a certain point it takes on too much damage. And when it starts taking on too much damage, it'll eventually just shut off. And I believe for me that's kind of happened, and that sounds kind of extreme, but I think it's happened to small degrees to a lot of people listening to this. It's just, you repeatedly use a muscle over and over again. Eventually it's going to say, hey, I'm sick of this, I'm turning off. And then what happens is other muscles have to compensate. So I'm going to try out that Advanced Muscle Integration Technique. Of course, I want to do more yoga. Yoga's really helped me out. I think that it's one of the best things I've done in the last few years as far as like my happiness, making me feel better, all that kind of stuff. Another thing that I want to do is ART, and I've done this before. ART is really cool. It's active release technique. They basically kind of go into, like, a lot of times shoulders are a good example of where people need ART. They will do these kind of pressure points and like stretch out the muscles at the same time, and it helps to basically release the scar tissue and give you more mobility. It's really cool. Another thing I want to do is try out Eastern medicine a little bit more. I haven't really touched too much with it, and it's still, I think there's a lot of fake people out there. I think there's something to it, don't get me wrong, but I went to a like Eastern medicine type person, like a Chinese medicine guy, and he felt like a little bit of a fraud. So I want to see if I can find like a legit person, because I do believe that the body is a little bit more complex than Western medicine sometimes wants to break it down into. I think that there's more of a unity, blah, blah, blah. Get into that on a whole nother episode. So then 2 more things I want to do to take better care of my body is more stretching. I think a lot of people, after they're done with like PE in high school, they never stretch again. And I do stretch a lot, but I'm not very flexible. So that's something I'm going to work on. And of course, the last thing for me is just a general rehab as far as fixing these pains. And I think for most people listening to this, it's, unless you've never really worked out before, chances are you probably have some muscles, some aches, some pains. Maybe it's time to take a little bit of time and focus on those and try to fix yourself up. So with all that being said, those are my big main takeaways from the year. I enjoy staying in one place. I want to work hard. I need to start enjoying myself more, and I need to take better care of my body. So now I'm just going to quickly go over some of my goals for the next year. And once again, don't forget, go to the website, howtodoyour20s.com, put your email in the little box thing, and I'm going to send you my entire episode that I'm going to spend a lot of, I've spent a lot of time researching it, and I'm going to spend even more researching because I haven't fully recorded it yet. It'll be ready by the time you sign up for the email. And it's all about how to hack your goals, how to really have goals that you can accomplish, and at the same time, how to accomplish them. It's going to be a complete thing. So go to the website, howtodoyour20s.com, and make sure you download that. So my goals for this coming year, the first one, of course, $200 a day in passive income. And I used one of my own little goal hacks there. I have a very specific number, $200 a day. And passive income. I've defined passive income myself, and I won't get into that. I kind of defined it earlier. But as you can see, it's specific. It's like I know whether I met it or not. There's no kind of like, I don't say I want to make a lot of money. A lot of people say like, I want to make a lot of money. I want to be happy. I want to do this, whatever. Those are bad goals. And I'll talk about in the episode why they're bad goals, but it probably already makes intuitive sense to you why. So my next goal is at least one podcast episode out a week. So every Monday, as you probably already know, I'm going to release a new episode. My goal is to keep that going, and I'm hoping to bump that up. But as far as my goal is, it's only 1 a week, because I don't want to have a crazy goal of 2 a week, because what happens a lot is people don't make their goals, and then they kind of get pissed off. And it's like, well, if I can't make 2 a week, I might as well not make any. And it sounds dumb, but I guarantee you've done this. I guarantee you've been on a diet and you've, had a cookie or something like that. And you're like, well, if I've already had 1 cookie, I might as well have another one. But that doesn't make any sense. So that's why I believe in the idea of tiny habits, do the bare minimum. And then if you have the desire to do more, of course do it, but set yourself up for success. So the next one I have is to fix and heal my body once and for all. And I just got done talking about that, so I'm not going to even go into that. I want to do yoga at least once a week, and I'm going to hope to build that up over time. But for the next month or 2, at least once a week, and I'm already beating that. I'm already doing I've already done twice, actually maybe 3 times this last week. But my goal itself is once a week. So, Sunday at 9 o'clock, if I realize, though, I haven't done any yoga, I do an hour of yoga, get that done. The next one is to do a full-on yoga retreat. I want to do a 5-day yoga retreat, and it's looking like I'm going to do it in Thailand when I go in February. And I'll talk more about that when I'm there or after I'm done, whatever. I also want to do, along the same vein, a 6-week healing intensive. And the only place that I know where you can do the active muscle integration technique, whatever it is, advanced muscle integration technique, is in, I believe there's some in Utah and Colorado, but I want to go to Utah because that's where like the real legit guy is. So I'm hoping and planning on doing like a 6-week, doing a little road trip first to get there, of course, and then doing a 6-week intensive there where that's my main objective. That's the one thing I'll be focusing on for that 6 weeks. And of course, I won't be fully fixed in that 6 weeks, but my goal is to start off my progress on a solid foundation. Now, the last goal is to work to enjoy the now more, generally be more confident in everything I do, and to make this year be the best year of my life to date. And this isn't a great goal for some reasons because it's not data driven. There's not like a metric that I can use to measure it. But I'm going to tell you right now, I think this is something I'm going to try to think about every day is like, how can I enjoy the now more? And it almost sounds contradictory, but I think that when you have that attitude going into a day, when things happen, you're going to be like, it's okay. For instance, the other day I hit some traffic that was really unexpected. When the cop car pulls ahead of you and starts zigzagging across four lanes, and they slow down the traffic? And when that happened, at first I'm like, God damn it. And then I realized, first off, someone else is having a way worse day if this cop car is doing it. That means there's probably an accident up ahead. And then second off, I don't really need to be anywhere. Let's just relax and turn on the music, turn on the radio, whatever, and enjoy myself. So that is the final goal of mine. And I really do want to work hard to try to make this year the best year possible. And once again, just wrapping all this up, I'm not a big New Year's resolution person. Despite this entire episode, I'm not big into the New Year's resolutions. I'm into the constant resolutions. I'm into the goals whenever you can. Set new goals for yourself once a month, once every 3 weeks, whatever it is. Set new goals for yourself. Thanks for listening to this episode. Now here's the quote from Henry Ford. And what he says is, I think that much of the advice given to young men about saving money is wrong. I never saved a cent until I was 40 years old. I invested in myself, in study, in mastering my tools, in preparation. Many a man who is putting a few dollars a week into the bank would do much better to put it into himself. That's a powerful quote. What does this mean? What it means is, why would you put money in the bank? Why would you not spend that money on improving who you are? And at the beginning of this episode, I said something about look at how a business looks at money. Now, if you're a business, you don't just have a big savings account to have a big savings account. What do? You're constantly reinvesting in the business, growing the business, making the business better. Well, I have news for you. You're better than a business, and you should be investing in yourself more than you would be reinvesting in a business. What I mean by that is, and I'm not saying you should go spend your money on stupid things. I'm not saying go spend $100 this Saturday night at the bar and buy all your friends drinks. That's retarded. If that's how you spend your money, I'm sorry, but that's not how you should do it. What I'm saying is spend that money and invest in yourself on the things that you're passionate about. So maybe, for instance, from out of my own personal life, I know that last year I was hesitant to join this mastermind e-commerce group, and that's what I do. I have an online store because it was $99, and I'm like, that's a lot of money. I don't know if I can afford that. Best $99 I ever spent. In fact, that's what got me into podcasting. I got a co-hosting position on Terry Lynn's podcast over at Build My Online Store. But not only that, I got tons of great business advice. It motivated me. It grew me as a person for $100. And I guarantee if you think hard enough, there's things in your life. Maybe it's going back to school. Maybe, it's doing anything. And I don't necessarily recommend college is always the answer. I'd say a better way to invest in yourself is buy a book. Because you can probably learn more from a book than you can from that $40,000 you're going to spend on grad school. But that's a whole nother topic. But really think, this year, how can you invest in yourself? And it could be a gym membership. It could be learning a martial art. It could be spending some money to heal your body. Whatever it is, figure out how to invest in yourself rather than just saving money for no reason. And I will be honest, I do save money like crazy. I'm a cheap guy, and I'm constantly putting money in the bank, but I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to start spending money on smart things. So with that, I hope you think this week about a cool way you can invest in yourself, a way that you can stop spending money on going out to eat or drinks with your friends and start spending money on yourself, on investing in yourself, making yourself the best person you can be, and it'll pay off. I guarantee it'll pay off. And with that, I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you guys next week.